It is 2 a.m. You are lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for sleep to come. Your body is exhausted, but your mind suddenly thinks about the past. Your brain pulls up a memory from 5, 10, or 15 years ago. A conversation where you said the wrong thing. A job offer you walked away from. A relationship you lost. A mistake you made in front of people whose respect you wanted. Your stomach tightens. Your heart rate speeds up. Your chest feels heavy. You roll over, close your eyes, and try to force the memory away. But your mind refuses to drop it. It plays the scenario again, changing the details. First, it shows what you should have done, then presents a better version of your life based on a single different decision. This is regret. It is one of the most agonizing emotions a human being can experience. It serves no obvious physical purpose. It cannot change what happened 10 minutes ago, let alone 10 years ago. It takes an event that is locked in the past and uses it to inflict physical and psychological pain on you in the present. So why does this painful experience exist inside your head? Why did natural selection not build a brain that learns from a mistake and moves on without making you suffer for weeks, months, or decades? Regret is a sophisticated cognitive function. It provides the ability to choose your own path, and without it, your life would collapse within days. Most animals on Earth are immune to regret. If a leopard stalks a gazelle, pounces, and misses, it feels something scientists call disappointment. The goal was meat. The outcome was no meat. The leopard's brain registers a failure, its hunger remains, and it moves on to look for another target. What the leopard cannot do is sit under a tree afterward, put its paws over its eyes, and torment itself with the thought that if it had taken 3 steps to the left before leaping, it would be eating right now. That mental step requires a capacity that almost no other creature possesses. Psychologists call it counterfactual thinking. Counterfactual thinking is the ability to create an alternate scenario inside your head. You take your current reality, remove a single past action, and construct a detailed simulation of what would have happened next. Then you compare that simulated outcome to your real life, which creates the pain. If the simulated outcome looks worse than your current reality, you feel relief or pride. But if the simulated outcome looks better than your reality, and you recognize that you made the decision that kept you out of it, your brain triggers regret. Your brain executes several complex steps to produce this pain. First, it stores a memory of what happened and invents a scenario that never occurred. Next, it simulates that scenario into the future, evaluates the outcome of a reality that does not exist, and assigns moral responsibility for the difference to you. This requires high processing power from a region of your brain located behind your forehead, the prefrontal cortex. Children cannot feel true regret until age 5 or 6. Before that age, if a child picks a box containing a sticker instead of a box containing a new toy, they might cry because they do not have the toy. That is disappointment. If you open the other box and show them what they could have had, a 4-year-old wants the toy. They do not blame their own prior choice or experience self-directed regret because their prefrontal cortex has not yet developed the capacity to run counterfactual simulations. You had to grow into this capacity. Your brain had to build a complex neural network designed to present alternative realities. Why did human biology build such a painful system in the first place? In 2004, cognitive scientist Camille Sirigu and her team in France conducted a study that revealed what happens when a human brain loses the ability to feel regret. They brought in 2 groups of participants to play a gambling game. The first group consisted of healthy individuals with fully functioning brains. The second group consisted of patients who suffered damage to a spot in the prefrontal cortex called the orbitofrontal cortex. In the game, players had to choose between 2 wheels that offered different odds of winning or losing money. In some rounds, after the player made their choice, the researchers showed them only the outcome of the wheel they picked. If they lost money, they felt disappointed. Both groups reacted the same way. In other rounds, the researchers opened up a full information condition. They showed the player what they won or lost on their chosen wheel and showed them what they would have won or lost if they had picked the other wheel. When healthy players picked a wheel that lost $50 and then saw that the other wheel would have won them $200, their brains registered regret. They blamed themselves, changed their strategy on the next turn, calculated risks differently, and learned. Patients with damage to the orbitofrontal cortex reacted differently. When shown that their choice lost money while the alternative would have won them money, they felt disappointed about losing, but registered no regret. They neither compared their reality to the counterfactual reality, nor blamed themselves for making the wrong choice. Because they felt no regret, their gameplay suffered. They kept making reckless decisions, failed to adjust, and went broke faster than any other group in the study. Outside the laboratory, people with orbitofrontal damage suffer devastating personal consequences. They fall for obvious financial scams, ruin personal relationships, and make disastrous business decisions repeatedly, aware of bad outcomes, but unable to emotionally register that their choices caused those outcomes. Without regret, experience teaches you nothing. Pain is your body's most effective teaching tool. If you put your hand on a hot stove burner, your nervous system floods your body with immediate, unendurable pain. That pain forces you to pull your hand away before your tissues are destroyed, creating a strong memory so that you never touch a hot burner again. Regret is nothing more than physical pain repurposed for decision-making. When you make a bad choice, such as treating a friend poorly, wasting a year of your life in a dead-end job, or spending money you do not have, there is no physical heat to injure your skin. The physical consequences might not show up for months or years. So your brain uses the anterior cingulate cortex, the same region that registers physical pain from a broken bone or a cut, to produce emotional distress in your mind. The sick feeling in your stomach, the tightness in your throat, and the sleepless night at 2 a.m. are signals your nervous system generates intentionally. This forces you to feel the pain of your choice so that when you face a similar decision, the memory of that pain stops you before you make the same mistake. Regret is the cost of human agency. If you had no free choice and your life were determined by instinct or external forces, regret would be useless. But because you have the power to direct your life, evolution built a painful correction mechanism to prevent self-destructive decisions. However, regret does not treat all choices equally. If you look at your own life, you will notice a pattern in how your regrets change as you grow older. Imagine asking two different people about their deepest regrets, a 22-year-old college student and an 80-year-old retiree. If you ask the 22-year-old, their regrets will almost certainly be about things they did. The embarrassing text they sent to an ex-partner last night, the reckless choice to drink too much before an exam, the fight they started with a roommate, the mistake they committed. If you ask the 80-year-old, their regrets will almost certainly be about things they didn't do. The trip they never took, the business they were too afraid to start, the person they loved but never approached, the conversation they avoided having before someone passed away. Psychologists Thomas Gilovich and Victoria Medvec spent years studying this shift to understand how regret changes over time. In the short term, actions cause more regret than inactions. When you make a mistake, the consequences appear immediately. The fallout is visible and painful. You face an awkward conversation, financial loss, or public embarrassment. Your brain registers sharp regret over what you just did. Because the consequences are immediate, your psychological defenses respond right away. You apologize, fix the mistake, rationalize your choice, and remind yourself that you learned a lesson. Within weeks or months, your mind processes the regret of action, treating the event as a completed story with a defined ending, so the pain fades. Inaction works in the opposite way. When you decide not to take a risk, such as not asking out a person you like, not applying for a job, or not moving to a new city, there is no immediate fallout. There is no messy scene, public failure, or sudden loss of money. In the short term, your brain feels safe, and you avoid danger. But as time passes, something insidious happens. Because you never acted, the scenario remains open-ended. You never received real-world feedback about what would have happened. Your mind continues to simulate the outcome. Instead of imagining realistic, messy outcomes, it constructs perfection, building an ideal version of the life you would have lived if you had taken that step. Decades later, you compare your real, flawed life to an idealized existence that your brain constructed out of nothing. Because that imaginary life has no real-world flaws, your actual life cannot compete with it. The regret of action is intense, but passes quickly. The regret of inaction lingers quietly, expanding over time until it occupies much of your memory. You can recover from a mistake you made, but you cannot resolve an outcome you never tested. Regret is essential for human survival, but modern conditions alter how it operates. For most of human evolution, your ancestors lived in small hunter-gatherer bands. Their daily choices were limited. They chose where to search for food, who to trust within a small circle of people, and how to stay safe from physical threats. The options were few, consequences were direct, and feedback was fast. In that environment, regret was an efficient tool. It corrected clear, repeatable mistakes. Now look at your life today. You live in a world of endless choice. You can choose between thousands of careers, scroll through millions of potential partners on a screen, live in almost any country, or spend your evenings consuming content from around the world. Every time you make a choice in the modern world, committing to one career, partner, city, or lifestyle, you decide against thousands of other possible lives. This triggers an unprecedented breakdown in human psychology, something sociologist Barry Schwartz calls the paradox of choice. When you have only two options and pick one that turns out poorly, you can blame the options. You pick the best of two bad choices, and your regret is muted. But when you have thousands of options and pick one that turns out to be imperfect, your brain places all responsibility on you. You could have chosen differently with 1,000 other paths available. One of them must have been better than this. In the modern environment, regret becomes chronic and exhausting rather than useful and temporary. You buy a phone, and instead of enjoying it, you feel regret because the manufacturer released a better model 3 weeks later. You enter a relationship, and during the first difficult argument, you wonder if one of the endless profiles you swiped past would have been easier to love. You choose a career, and every hard day at work feels like proof that you picked the wrong path. You constantly compare your real, messy daily life to the polished, curated highlights of thousands of other lives displayed on screens. Your brain evolved before this volume of choices existed. It signals distress even when you are living a normal, imperfect life. If you do not manage this process, chronic regret stops your progress. Fear of making the wrong choice can cause you to stop making choices altogether. As time passes while trying to avoid short-term regret, you enter the far worse outcome of long-term inaction regret. How do you manage a brain that creates painful alternate realities? The first step is to recognize regret for what it is. When physical distress arrives at 2 a.m., stop fighting it. Do not try to convince yourself that you do not care, and do not fall into self-loathing. Recognize that your brain is performing a survival function. It detected a gap between where you are and where you could be, using emotional pain to grab your attention. Identify the useful lesson about what to do differently next time, and then stop playing the scenario. The simulated scenario in your mind is not real, missing the unpredictable problems, boring days, and friction that exist in real life. The second step is to change how you handle decisions today. When faced with a choice that scares you, such as a risk that could lead to failure, embarrassment, or awkwardness, remember how regret changes over time. Ask yourself whether in 10 years you will regret the temporary pain of failing or the uncertainty of never trying. If you act and fail, your brain experiences brief distress. It processes the mistake, allows you to adapt, and the regret dissolves. If you do not act, your prefrontal cortex continues to generate hypothetical scenarios, creating an idealized reality that troubles you as you grow older. You cannot eliminate regret from your life. The only way to never feel regret is to suffer catastrophic damage to your orbitofrontal cortex or to stop making choices. Regret is not proof that you failed at life. It is proof that you are human, that you have agency, and that you possess a mind capable of imagining a better future. It comes with a life lived with freedom. Living with zero regret is impossible. Aim to ensure that when you look back at the end of your life, your regrets stem from mistakes you were brave enough to make, rather